opportunity early on in our careers, in our education. I mean, we were talking about reading with second graders, and I heard fourth grade, and almost everybody talked about something before high school. Working with the track team and so on. And I just think, and I wonder about the kids that are disenfranchised, Ben, that you're talking about. Have they ever been put in a role of leadership? Have they ever been allowed to be leaders? Or do they always think of themselves as outcasts, or at least as part of the herd? And I just think, it's amazing. There's so much emphasis on college and getting into the right college in this society. Boy, look at how much, my experience of almost everybody I know is that by the time they got to college, they'd had the experiences that broke or built their confidence. And there are micro confidences too. You can go up to somebody who's really beaming at a party, etc., and you talk about the fact that I talk about the fact that I teach math, and they say, "Oh, I'm never any good at math." I talk about the fact that I'm a painter. Oh, I couldn't draw a straight line with a ruler. We've got these things that we feel we're good at, we feel we're not good at, but so much of what we talked about, and I think so many of us without much effort, can track back to not just our parents, but to what our roles our teachers envisioned for us, that and opportunities they made for us. And it wasn't just that we were dutiful and handed in homework on time, because that often is nowhere, and that often makes us more invisible than anything else. But the opportunities we have to really become leaders and take on leadership roles. So I'm going to push back, break a little bit. I'm going to eat into Dr. Stephanakis' time, but let's go ahead and start the conversation with Margie. I ask everybody to help support Margie, realizing we're all going to be leading conversations ourselves.
Let me have it. So I just have a PowerPoint. It's nothing big, but I just multiple intelligences. Yeah.
Mark, did he start this? Do we know? I believe it's on.
There's no red light.
But the time is clicking, and there's a red light here.
Time,
what?
He kept checking. I thought he had it on the whole time.
You might.
Somebody try to find him.
Or does anybody, is anybody more technologically savvy than I? Well, everybody's more technologically savvy than I am in this room.
So I'm only bringing my phone up here so I don't run over on how long this needs to be. So,
Oh, yeah, it's recording. It's recording.
Oh, okay. So keep going.
It's on and we're good to go.
So I just printed out the slides just in case. And these websites, let me start my timer actually so I know. So what do I have, a half an hour-ish? Okay. So these websites that we were supposed to read were pretty vast in my opinion. In my opinion, you guys probably felt the same way. And so there's a lot of things I feel like we could all draw from them. But I had some, I think maybe just my background coming from someone who formed campaigns in the recent past was thinking about campaigns. So I thought just to kind of review what everyone went through, and I know everyone has a busy class and work schedule, so if I was going to have everyone count off by threes, but I feel like that's kind of silly. But if you guys could, if everyone could maybe take maybe the ed.gov, and then a couple people take the CEC and NABE, and pick out one, this is a little mixed up, but pick out one article or one campaign that you see or one complaint that the author has, and start thinking about it in the context of some of these questions. What's the problem that the article is addressing, either broadly or specifically or both? Who is reading this? Who do you think this is intended for? But then also if you want to think about who's the intended audience. So there are people reading it who probably aren't the intended audience, and vice versa. There's probably an intended audience that isn't reading it, and just thinking about that sort of target population. And then if there is a proposed solution attached to one of these articles, so I left my computer up over there in case if you two wanted to use it and just peruse around. But just maybe by show of hands, can maybe like 2 or 3 people take the EdGov? Okay, I just want to make sure like each website's covered a little bit. Someone take CEC, great, and then NAVE, whoever has to pick it up. Is that okay? Thanks. So maybe just take about 10 minutes now. This doesn't have to be long because y'all have already looked through these websites, but maybe one article that struck you from them, pick it out and just start skimming it and rethinking it in this context. So.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you
Absolutely.
probably can't actually answer this, but you perhaps could. Last time when we spoke with Dr. Stefanaki, she said that the assignments for like next class were in this column and the readings were in this column for the following class. Just so for clarification for future presentations. Alright. I was just slightly confused.
You're confused about which was the real assignment?
Right. Because I thought she said, like, for example, on 9-6, the assignment listed there would be due for 9-13. And the assignment for 9-13 would be due on 9-20. And the readings for 9-20 would be due on 9-10-3.
Let me zoom back a little bit
Okay.
and ask a larger question. How many people have not looked at these sites?
Oh, well, that's okay. I mean, honestly, you can kind of gather what I'm taking from it by looking at it just a cursory glance at it. So picking one article and thinking of it in this context. So it shouldn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes, even if you haven't read these websites.
Yeah, it was just my question moving forward for presentations.
Exactly, yeah.
That you can ask Dr. Stefanakis.
Okay, so Okay.
I think there was some confusion about which, obviously, there was about a 50-50 split as to what we were supposed to do for this time. So I'm going to leave that to her, but I don't want to take more of your
Not
time.
at all.
So
No,
what's
I understand.
your resolution for the fact that half the people haven't seen this?
Well, if people haven't seen it, I think just a cursory glance, we could still answer some of these questions. And so, and even from the titles, you can tell what the problem is the author is intending, maybe looking through, seeing if you see a prescribed solution he or she is offering. And if you don't gather all the information, that's fine, but it would just do your best to try to gather some of these questions, the answers to some of these questions. Do you mind if I erase that?
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
It's null and void anyhow.
So just about, we'll say like 10 minutes, we're at 5 minutes now, so just 10 minutes of doing that, maybe 15, people need more time. I don't know where my slides are.
So Ben and Fonda and Noriaki, are you doing,
I was today, anyway.
yeah, you want to go over the
So
Yeah,
and then
If you want to look at one, it's really okay if you look at your own article and you work together or
Because
it's up to you.
I just said this.
Yeah, I was thinking, even last module stuff, I was like,
It's up to you. I mean,
I guess I'll say it all later. But yeah, I did exactly the same. Great, okay.
So just to
Sure, it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Did you ask me a question, Ben?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I'm answering. Which are you guys
Yeah,
doing
I
Ed.gov?
don't know.
we're doing CEC.
This is ed.gov,
Oh, okay, so they're very
and you folks, I think, are doing NAVE.
okay.
I think that sounds interesting. Okay, that'll be interesting. Districts are continuing to struggle financially.
There you go.
No, I'm just trying to see what they're doing. So,
I guess we can do the same
do you
one.
want to go to
Yeah, y'all can do the same one. I think,
It's just picking an article that affects education.
Yeah, something that has to do with policy, and what's the problem they're talking about? You know, all of them are really addressing some problem. I mean, there's not a shortage of problems in education that each of these websites is picking to address.
That's okay. Alright, probably I mean, besides educators, going to policymakers, just need to go website. I don't know how much, but
And tell me, I'm gonna scroll down, but let me know.
they're probably not every, all educators either, it's not like
If I
everyone's like, it's probably just usually
Oh.
superintendents,
Let's
get
talk
a
about
subscription.
that.
I don't know.
Education training and children's development. So I'm thinking of moving to a health class. How are we?
Yeah.
Which health is the.
They probably have
Thing we should.
the intention of having a larger audience than they actually do.
I was gonna be a fresh learner.
Well, this one, I mean, she was from the abstract, I was here last week, and I wrote a review for this.
For the, yeah, I thought you said the
So
job
it's
description.
the abstracts, we're not gonna be able to see
Yeah,
it.
right.
Or maybe we can do it from the
The
abstract.
housing pass too.
But I,
Do you want to read it?
this is.
Yeah, we can,
Oh,
let's do it if you want.
do the next.
Yeah. No,
Well,
it's fine.
I don't know, because we had that
I
reflection
just
due
do
on the
which is what I do.
Yep.
It's first last sentence, then you look for
Yeah.
keywords and pop up.
Well, I,
The question was this, was
But I'm
this
just
when-
reading now, I'm just trying to get a sense of.
This was.
I just wrote it anyway. I just didn't
Also,
know.
Oh, really?
The first, you read this by the first.
Awesome.
I barely had all the books by the first.
Actually, I did last week. It's fine.
You guys kind of see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So basically, it's important for them to know how to do it. It's just important and awesome and changing right now. This is what this. Yeah, it seems like this word is basically saying. Yeah. I mean, yeah, basically stating
I guess we should talk about it too.
Yeah, should be fine. So our goal on it.
No, they were like
Abstract,
blog,
right?
yeah, abstracts, so, yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I'm not gonna be very, like, it's
It's
pretty, I feel like there's just that's kind of like what, eventually, so what are some of the issues that people are upset about?
I guess for me, it's one of those.
Maybe
Well, she
she
does the library, she does the
policy, but it could affect policy. Clearly,
I like search for the class.
it's dual.
I'm
interaction.
Maybe there's too many.
Well, for grade class, how do you say to them, X, Y, and Z is gonna affect you? Do you know what I'm saying?
Seems that this is saying that if they aren't in a dual immersion program, they kind of shrug Spanish and focus on English, which is probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I guess, at what age are they saying? Because they're basically saying here that since 1985, only about what percentage here offered. So that's a small percentage, only half of medical schools, that's med schools, with environmental conditions. But there needs to be more, that's 1985, so they've come up with a new stat since then. They might be using that statistic just to argue their point.
So then, these are basically those on the who are supporting the suggestions.
Yeah, it's their, it's this organization running this. But they did recognize all of these other organizations Associations. Did you give up? Right, well, it seems outdated. It seems outdated.
Just in the target of the website, it's about angle education, by education professionals, learners and professionals.
Obviously, it's a profession is about. Right, but I think also it's so many individuals different organizations and clubs. I'm going to have this needs to
You guys have,
This is important motivation because
What?
so many of this session.
Dr. class, but which one?
I took it.
Were you guys able to answer all those questions?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. How about just like 3 more minutes? You guys need more than that, maybe? 3, 5, maybe? 3 to 5? Okay.
Hanging out.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm used to things going wrong. If you guys want to pick a second one, that might help too, to gather evidence for my point. And making my point
Super.
more clear.
Cool.
But I'll leave it, you help us around that.
So,
Oh,
so makes sense.
This is excellent.
What's that about? That nice alliterative title.
Shows my I'm just thinking.
Oh, so you don't look at it.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of for discussion, what's a problem website? It's basically environmental. Yeah, that's what they say is constant education, because in general, it just, it's traditional curriculum game. I'm interested. You're interested in this?
Okay.
I would say active, environmental activist.
Sure.
So this is citizen submissions on enforcement action. These are people who basically,
just finishing up your final thoughts. Again, it doesn't have to be completely complete, but
it basically says.
Maybe just
this is
personally
legal,
know
this needs to be done.
what you feel about this article.
So it's basically.
Did you get this one? Did you get a copy of this? Sure you
Yes.
need another paper.
No.
I mean, you need another paper to add.
I think
No, 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 no.
organizations like healthcare professionals.
Yeah, she knows what the solution was.
Environmental.
Doubling the amount of funds.
The problem is that
Cool.
regular
Oh, that's so funny.
conversion programs are just English-based, just one way. And this is saying it should be both ways. Not just economics.
So it's-
They're
So vague, I don't know what you mean. Family engagement.
All right, finish up last thoughts and then we'll come back together. 30 seconds.
Like her colleagues. Dr. Karen Knapp's friends.
So sort of realizing none of these articles fit exactly into this structure of like an obvious intended audience or a like problem solution outcome. Maybe we can just gather a few ideas because something was striking to me, and I kind of want to prove it to people. So maybe this isn't as much of a discussion, but no, it is, because this is not identifying the achievement gap, it's addressing the achievement gap, so hopefully we can find some solutions in this and be constructive. So anyway, who talked about NABE, or who read the NABE website? What did you guys read about, or what are some of the problems that they were talking through?
It seemed, the whole website that we were looking at was about bilingual education. This is what NAVE is about. And basically dealing with inequities in education for bilingual learners. Our specific article had to deal with dual immersion programs, so both being immersed in both Spanish and English in this case, and that there was a positive impact of these dual immersion programs. In other words, it kind of implied in this, we could only read abstracts, but the one-way immersion programs kind of hinder home culture appreciation. And they were kind of specifically saying one of the tests or one of the variables was how these students after these programs or later on felt about hearing Spanish or Spanish speaking and things like that. And it was clearly a higher, it was higher for, there was a higher appreciation for students in the dual immersion programs.
What was the nomenclature used? Home culture appreciation?
I just said that.
That's
home
good.
Culture appreciation. Generally, that seemed to be what they were talking about.
Who do you think this article was written for? Or who do you think reads this?
Noriaki was saying that the whole website and the opening page talks about this is for bilingual learners and bilingual educators, the whole website. This article, we didn't really get that far in terms of that. I would say, I don't know. I would assume perhaps for educators and policymakers, people who are interested in trying to figure out whether these things are good or bad or that they should use them in their schools, I would assume.
Exactly. Yes. I actually read that article too.
Okay.
And that is a great example. This is going well. Okay. Who read let's go to ed.gov.
So we looked at 2 different articles.
I'm going to ask everybody to speak up, so we're recording this, so everybody speak up if they can.
So we read 2 different articles. The first one was about the American Jobs Act. And so basically what we thought the problem that the website or article was addressing was not just a lack of jobs, but within different school districts, a lot of teachers were being laid off, extracurricular activities were being eliminated. And so that was a problem that the article was addressing. As for who is reading the website, we thought most likely educators, policymakers, those were the ones who are probably reading this website and this article.
You think policymakers?
Because it's a .gov website and the way it's kind of slanted, it was really funny because this article was like, oh, the secretary went around to all these schools and he identified the problem. The problem is they have to cut all of these programs because they have financial struggle and there's teacher layoffs and all this interesting stuff. So now their solution is to try to pass the Jobs Act, and that will allocate, what was it, like $30 billion or something to fix that problem, and then we'll be okay.
So the solution is give more money?
Give more money, which ironically was the solution in the other article we read.
Oh, curious.
Double funding. So that'll fix it.
What was the other article?
It was about family engagement in Title I, which I'm not very familiar with.
Okay.
And how there needs to be more family engagement, basically, was the point of the article.
Okay.
And its effect on student achievement.
So the solution is more.
Yeah.
Double.
Also, maybe I'm kind of pessimistic, but I'm not sure how many people actually do read the website. Like, it's really funny because,
I know,
like really, like, who reads, like, the only time I ever went to ed.gov was because I had to, like, fill out a form for student loans. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, hey, let's see what's going on over here.
And policymakers, or even constituents, I mean, this website is, like, hideously boring.
It's awful.
And a policymaker, all they hear all day is more. I don't know if they're proactively searching out ed.gov to find something else that's saying more. I think the intended audience is policymakers,
Right.
but I know my congressman is not scouring ed.gov for what he can do. You know, he's maybe asking an intern to read it and write bullet points on, you know, the entire website. So anyway, that being said, CEC.
So, well, just to piggyback on what you were saying, in terms of who does readings, I have to say as a researcher, we do seek out these websites as places for some like
Okay.
ideas.
Yes.
For research ideas and where grants would be. So, so ed.gov is actually a site that I do visit somewhat frequently. But that's.
I agree, I think like, I think the intended audience is different than the actual audience.
Yeah.
So, okay, continue.
So
Sorry.
regardless, the CEC that we looked at was the Commission for Environmental Cooperation of North
Mhm.
America, which is an environmental website, and the article we read was Education and Training on Children's Health and the Environment for Healthcare Professionals, Status and Opportunities.
Okay.
So this website was not necessarily dominantly about education whatsoever. We sort of Googled the word education, and this is one of the articles that came up. In fact, it seems like it's mostly about sort of environmental issues, one of them being Mexico bricklaying.
Traditional methods.
So, but this again, where you're saying the solution is sort of more, this is sort of what the argument was making, you need more education on environmental health. And we were just sort of commenting on the issue here as sort of prioritizing. Yes, it's an important factor, but how important is it in comparison to some of the other health issues that need to be accomplished? And sort of when you're, an activist for environmental organization, obviously that's going to be sort of your agenda and what you're going to be arguing for your particular view. And
Does the article address that? Does it say something to that effect? Like, I don't know how important this is, but it's kind of important, or?
No, it says it's really important because of, it's really interesting, actually, the references that they were using were very outdated. They were 1985, and I said, I don't know if they're more outdated stats they're just not using because they like the 1985 date, because the data there only said that, suggests that only half the medical schools included environmental and occupational health as part of their curricula.
And they didn't compare it to anything either, so it didn't say this should be taught in priority over this issue or this issue, it was just, it should be taught, and be more
So along that, did you find, when I was reading that website, I agree, it wasn't as much educationally focused, but the answer is usually more education, even if it's not an education focus. And I think when everyone gets a chance, or if you already have, when you search that website, there's a couple other issues that they address similarly that are like, this is important, public health, like more education is important, but there's sort of, it almost ends up being the law of diminishing returns. There's so many things saying this is the most important thing, so I don't feel like there's any unifying campaign. So that was something that really struck me when we were asked to read them, and what struck you, I just figured the answer kept being like more, more money, bilingual more bilingual education. And the other thing I thought was really frustrating was how many of these, again, the intended audience was different than the actual audience. And so where we could make the most impact is speaking to our actual audience, where researchers, teachers are going to these websites for resources, but the people who can actually affect policy, in my experience, aren't, Invisible Children, I'm going to talk about it a lot because that's my most recent history, but we started this thing called a crisis tracker, and it was really for our constituents to find out, to put pressure on our policymakers, because we knew our policymakers weren't going to make it a priority until the constituents were asking for them to make it a priority. So what frustrated me about these readings was there was no cohesive campaign, and the action step, as obvious as it was, more bilingual education, more money, more environmental health education, it wasn't very specific. More is very nebulous. More in what way? Just more money? And if it's more money, who is getting that extra money? The only way you can get more money is to get more policy affected, and the only way to do that is really to have your intended audience be your constituents, rather than, which it sounds like actually that has happened, so it might be more of a frustration of proxy rather than so if grant makers are actually going on there, finding those things out, like kudos, thank goodness somebody is using this information to actually get that extra money. But I thought that was a little bit frustrating. So, I just wrote down quickly, thought you guys could look real quick what some of the mission statements were, which again, were sort of buried within the website. You had to do a little bit of due diligence to find them. And this is paramount to being successful in any policy campaign. And so, I think it goes back to and ties in very well with what we were talking about earlier, that we might have fantastic ideas, but I think the presentation and the technological savvy of the people who have the most information is like the biggest expanse. And so in order to practice what I preach, like if we're going to address and not just identify the achievement gap, I think it's going to be through educating ourselves technologically, being good designers, and being fantastic storytellers. Because if we can't tell the story to the right audience, it's going to be white noise and ineffectual, in my opinion. And I also think policymakers follow their constituents. Our constituents are millennials whose attention span is about this long, and so unless we can have a little flash in our presentation, we're not going to be, I don't think, as effective in affecting policy or in doing these large paradigm shifts. So, and I do think it's going to be a paradigm shift that's actually going to be the ultimate solution. That's my opinion. I don't think it's going to be, I wrote about it in our reflection, I don't think it's going to be these quick fixes that are just going to abdicate responsibility for the people who've been responsible for brushing the achievement gap under the rug and being able to do that. So, all that to be said, I pulled up that article I was talking about, and can people see this from the back?
No.
No? Let me make it bigger then, and then I'll scroll down. I have this weird thing about paper wasting, so as much as I can put things on the screen, I try to. Is that a little better? It's bigger? Nick? So I'll go one more.
Other people's eyes might be better than mine.
Okay, that's very clear. Okay, this is Seth Godin. I read his blog every day, and he's a big, he is an innovator in business and technology, and he's a maven of new and incredible ideas. And he's one of the biggest critics of current education system. And he actually tells his kids, just go to school and pass, because you're not going to get your education there. Come home and then I'll teach you what you really need to know. So it's very controversial. Part of it I'm not sure I all agree with, but at the same time I love these, like you were saying earlier, these ideas that sort of stick a stick in the spoke of the bicycle that's moving, because some sort of jarring thing has to happen in order to shift our paradigm. So maybe I'll start scrolling down as soon as I see people have advanced. Warm in here. So I just thought this was an interesting, I'll email it out to the class, but I thought this was an interesting article, and he has another new blog that was about sort of like talking about education reform and rethinking why and how these institutions were formed. Oh, thanks.
Chinese fans.
Actually, that feels fantastic. So,
Gift from one of my students.
that's so polite. Wow.
Huh?
Hint, hint.
No. Katie Schuler, one of our scholars, was a teacher. She actually was part of a mission in China this summer. And so she brought back that, and she's sort of part of our principal's cohort. She's not here today. Can't take this class, so she has conflict, but she is going to visit us, and she sent that for us.
Nice.
So yeah, I think going back to look, what I really noticed from Dr. Stefanakis, what I felt like the biggest thing I noticed from this was the lack of cohesive campaigns and effective campaigns. And to me, asking for more money, it makes me cringe. I'm sure it makes everyone else cringe, but it's not impossible. Like, that's not a bad thing. And if that's what you actually need, I think if the millennial generation has one superpower, it's to be able to spot a phony, because we're given 10,000 ads a day promising us one thing that don't deliver. And so we are able to jump right through to the heart of the matter, saying, you're asking for money, just say it already. So I thought that was something that was missing, and really interesting about these three websites, which are necessary and important, but I just, my heart breaks for the effectiveness of the important message they need to get across. And I can show this video because I didn't make it, but Invisible Children I think is, I just keep going back to it because I'm in love with it, but
You're going to play it for us?
I was going to play one quick video. It's a 2-minute clip, if I can find it. Where did I put it?
Do they know you're Miss Invisible Children?
They do. I think so. I think I've talked about it probably 5,000
I
times.
just want to make sure everybody knows.
I love it so much. So this is, okay, we won't do that. So I think this is just one example of, we, as an organization, came across the same problem, child soldiers. How do you do that, And I don't think it's impossible. Yeah, I was trying to do that, but it says I can't embed it.
Okay.
I think I saw this on Google.
Maybe.
Movie sub is what?
The movie. I have like a
Like
zillion
Invisible
copies. I have
Children.
like a closet full of stuff, of swag. But I think ask child soldiers, how do you talk about it? How do you talk about it to kids? These seem like and what we need is money, and I think they seem at first like insurmountable issues, but our Imagineers, for lack of a better word, I think are just fantastic at campaign building. And so we found ways to ask for money, being expressly asking for money, but also a very targeted campaign that was results driven. And I just wanted to play a quick video for you of that. So it's 2 minutes.
Lights are right there. Try to circle.
Sometimes I think sitting on trains. Every step I get to, I'm clicking over $17,000.
$25,000.
And when you go back to your classroom, you study, and you know that it's young people like you who are raising the money, not the big people.
Everyone's a winner, we're making our fame. On the side, hustler, making money. No one on the corner has swag like us. Hit me on my banner, prepaid wireless. We pack and deliver like UPS trucks. Already going hard, just pumping that gas.
So, I guess in conclusion, reading these, again, I felt frustrated, and asking for more is not bad. And I think within this room, even we can come up with some cool campaigns about the issue we're personally most excited about. And if it's asking for money, I think we throw it out there and we just find a fun way to do it. It's called, another cool video I wanted to show, but I don't have time. It's called Fun Theory. And so if you guys go on YouTube tonight, look it up. It's Volkswagen's new campaign about how to get people to buy their cars. And the only way to make positive change in people is to make it fun, pretty much. So,
How long is that video? Do you have it here?
oh, I can pull it up right now.
Are you okay? Because I think it's really important to parallel how you send a message from an educational point, as she has, well, what's being done in the corporate world. And Volkswagen is a master, and has been for a long time. So I think it's worth us looking at how do we get our heads around that, because our heads are often not around that.
Oh,
You don't
sweet.
mind.
Oh, 2 minutes, 48 seconds.
Yeah, all of a sudden you've seen it.
Yeah, so frankly, those websites are not fun, and no one's going on there voluntarily. And so if constituents aren't doing it, then they're not getting informed, they're not telling their policymakers, and they're not inspiring change or putting pressure on the thing that they're most interested in. So the thing, if I were to answer the question, I would be a master storyteller and teacher of storytelling, teacher of stories. Because I think that's the only way we're going to connect to people, telling true stories. So that's my presentation. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
So have you folks had a break
We've
yet?
not had a break.
So I brought Subway sandwiches and cookies in the back. I'll leave them out in the
Okay, let's take a 15-minute break.
Is that right? Yep.
Yeah. Turn on the lights.
To clarify, moving forward.
Sure.
In terms of like, for example,
Why don't we hang on after break, because we all need a break, and I want to make sure everybody's convenient. That would be great. If you want to,
And I think your question, everybody wants to know the answer.
right.
yes.
And people deserve to have their break.
And
Dr.
for
Russ,
the-
do you want me to pause this? For something to pause this?